Hey there! In this month's edition of The New Scientist dated September 4, 2021, there was an article that looked at how spiteful behaviors in human has upsides. Research indicates that anger dehumanises the empathetic behavior in people, and it is partly due to the pursuit of dominance and acts of counter-dominance. If you are looking for more fascinating information on spiteful behaviors, continue listening on as we go through the article. Out of spite. The dark side of human nature has some unexpected upsides, says Simon McCarthy-Jones. Man buys a house next door to his ex-wife and installs a 4-meter bronze statue of a hand, middle finger raised, facing her window. A prominent investor buys a company so he can fire the management dislikes, even though he stands to lose money. People take their time at the checkout to annoy the next customer, buy gnomes for their garden to antagonize a neighbor, and slow down to annoy tailgaters, even though it puts everyone in danger. Examples of spiteful behavior, harming another at some cost to yourself, aren't hard to find. As a psychological game where no one wins, spite is puzzling. We may wonder why it wasn't weeded out by evolution long ago. Instead, in a competitive era of identity politics, all too often played out on social media, it seems more prevalent than ever. Yet, compared with other social behaviors like selfishness, cooperation, and altruism, there has been relatively little psychological research into why we do it, with potentially far-reaching consequences for both political stability and individual mental health. It has never been more important to understand this dark side of human behavior. For many years, most of the research into spite came from the field of behavioral economics, the study of how human decision-making differs from what you would expect from a purely rational point of view. Classical economists dreamed up the concept of homo economicus, a person who only ever acts to maximize their own rewards. If offered a choice between something and nothing, homo economicus would always take what is on offer. In experiments, however, this isn't how everyone behaves. In the ultimatum game, created by economist Werner Guth at the University of Cologne in Germany in 1977, one volunteer is given a pot of money and asked to decide how much of it to share with another player. If the other player accepts the offer, both will keep their share of the cash. But if the other player refuses the offer, both leave empty-handed. They only play the game once. In Guth's experiments, approximately half of the volunteers rejected offers of 20% or less of the pot, one leaving both players with nothing. At the time, these spiteful rejections were explained as being due to people's anger at being treated unfairly, motivating them to pay a price to punish the other. Indeed, analysis of facial muscles during the ultimatum game suggested that unfair offers led to anger and disgust, which motivated players to punish the non-sharer. Brain imaging studies suggest that the brain also processes people's faces differently when they have violated norms of behavior, treating them as less face-like. This suggests that, in our anger, we dehumanize norm violators, which makes it easier to set aside our empathic nature and punish them. The ultimatum game is a one-shot situation, but real life is not. Spite evolved to persuade people to treat us better next time. But in the past decade or so, cracks have appeared in the idea that spite evolved to make unfair people behave better. Further experimental games found that people didn't only spite others who acted unfairly. They would also spite those who acted fairly, particularly when they could hide behind anonymity. Other studies found that spitefully punishing someone didn't seem to work as a way of persuading them to treat you better in future. If spite evolved for a reason, increasing cooperation didn't seem to be it. So, if boosting cooperation doesn't explain spite, what does? One clue comes from the fact that, as social species, our position in the pecking order matters to our survival. Spite may have its roots in the desire to get ahead of others, dominance, and to stop others getting ahead of you, counter-dominance. It is clear that the human desire for dominance has deep evolutionary roots, but so, it appears, does our counter-dominant drive. Anthropologists argue that our hunter-gatherer ancestors evolved an egalitarian instinct to pull others down when they threaten to pull ahead. When Christopher Boehm, an anthropologist at the University of Southern California, examined the social structures of contemporary hunter-gatherer societies, he found they were strongly egalitarian, at least in male-male relations. If a male hunter-gatherer got above himself and tried to take more than his share, or even if he had brought home a particularly impressive kill that would benefit everyone, but also inflate his status, he could be punished. This may explain a seemingly confusing aspect of spite, that we are capable of spiting those whose actions have materially helped us. When someone helps us, but in a way that boosts their own social status, our spiteful side kicks in to cut them down to size. This phenomenon is called do-gooder derogation, and it has been seen both in lab-based economic games and in real life. In one such game, all players earn money if they pay into a group investment fund. Even though everyone benefits from the actions of generous investors, some players were happy to give up some of their earnings to see those of the more generous investors destroyed. In real life, this phenomenon may also explain why vegans attract so much ire, particularly on social media. They are perhaps being punished for living out a lifestyle that is seen to be morally purer than most. Hillary Clinton's campaign in the '06 U.S. presidential election, which focused on the rights of women and minority groups, may also have triggered do-gooder derogation and contributed to her defeat. To make things more complicated, both the presence and absence of an audience can encourage spiteful acts. In a study using another economic game, called The Joy of Destruction, volunteers worked to assess the quality of magazine adverts. Everyone was paid fairly, according to how much work they had done. Participants were then given the option to destroy some of the other players' earnings. If they had to do this publicly, hardly anyone chose destruction. Yet, when given a blanket of anonymity, around 40% opted to destroy some of the other players' fairly earned money. This can be seen on social media, too. Anonymity helps to release our spiteful side. Spite for likes. On the other hand, some studies show that an audience is often required to unleash our social conscience.